jazzed to be here, mostly so that I'm not in my truck anymore, at least for a little while. I'm also super guilty of not knowing my audience as well as I should, and so I hope to not insult you with things that are boring or that you already know, and instead maybe give you some good ideas. One of the advantages of being old is that if you get old enough, lucky enough, you start to see patterns that you might not have caught if you were younger and earlier in your career. And so I'm going to try to give you a little bit of perspective from a guy who's old, and certainly old in AI years. And the first thing I want to tell you about is the kinds of personalities you see in the AI world. Type number one are what I'll call the irrational enthusiasts. If you look at the stock market, you'll see that all of the growth in our market in this last year plus has been AI companies. That's where the money goes. That's what everybody believes in. I don't see a ton of these irrational enthusiasts, honestly, in the national security community, but man, they're over the private sector. Just everywhere you go, thinking that all the positive and wonderful ways that AI is going to change the world, and maybe make some of the things that we do completely irrelevant in the future. I also see a second type of personality in the AI space, and that's the chicken littles. The ones who fear our AI overlords and who can describe to you all of the ways that AI to ruin our lives, put people out of work. It's going to have security implications that are going to make us so that we can't trust things. It's going to disadvantage certain populations more than others. And find all kinds of reasons why AI is evil, and the creators of AI are evil, and that using AI makes you evil as well. I do plenty of those in the national security space. Third kind of person that you'll find in the AI world are the deniers, the skeptics, the people who don't believe the hype. And there's probably a fair amount of skepticism that should go around because there's a significant amount of hype. But the deniers don't really even want to pay any attention to this whole AI thing. They're just going to go about life the way that they've always gone about life, or work the way that they've always gone about work, or fight wars the way they've always fought wars, because this AI stuff is just hype from those irrational enthusiasts. And then maybe the fourth one, and there's probably more types that are out there, are pretenders. The pretenders have PowerPoints where they sprinkled AI on everything that they used to do. This is the same thing in my industry, the cybersecurity industry. You just sprinkle a little bit of zero trust on your old firewall and you've got a whole new product category. So you'll find plenty of pretenders. They're a little hard to sort out if you're a skeptic, because you got to spend a little bit of time to figure out who knows what they're talking about, who's been doing the real work, versus those who are just using the lingo. So watch out for these guys along the way. But also, I think, be mindful that in the national security community, unfortunately, I see more deniers and skeptics and more pretenders and more chicken littles than I do enthusiasts. And maybe we need to be a little bit more enthusiastic. I'll shift gears a little bit and talk about that and say that if you look at what's happening with LLMs and Gen AI and the rise of AI right now, it is really amazing. And you can find yourself with a lot of wonder. And you can find yourself actually pretty enthusiastic. When you start to scratch the surface, right? That's what you see. That's the first things that you see. But I want to give you a perspective that all of this AI and all this wonderful stuff that we're doing right now, the way our industry works, we have these periods of rapid acceleration, followed by, since Andy's here, I'll have to use a Gartner idea, a trough of disillusionment, right? Like all of the dreams are dashed, the stuff doesn't work, and we get really bummed out. And this is the way our industry has been forever. I started AI in the 90s. That was the invent of neural networks, as well as other things. They showed a lot of promise, then they didn't deliver on that promise, and there was an AI winter where you couldn't talk about AI for a really long time. We have winter come. Winter will come. Some of those high valuations will fall. Some of those skeptics are going to say that I was right. But I do want you to realize, too, that things that you call software today, we called AI even 10 years ago, not all that long ago. Edge recognition, by the way, finding the edges in an image on the way to finding a target, that was AI 20 years ago. It was actually hard to run a Sobel or whatever your means of finding the edges were, and then even harder to know if those characteristics match the characteristics of the target you're looking for. That was AI. That is commonplace now. You can find pictures of your family automatically on your iPhone because it's seen your family member before. That stuff was AI. It's just a feature in software. The same thing is true of natural language processing, right? That was a really big deal. Hard to find a name in a document or a place in a document or understand what a sentence, its basic sentence structure and meaning were. We take all those things for granted now. There are still some hard problems there, by the way, but most of it's easy. Speech to text, do you remember Dragon Speaking? I remember the guys that would like talk into a microphone at their desk and have it convert it into text so they could, I don't know, save some time, record a meeting. This stuff is easy. Everybody's phone does that now. We don't call it AI anymore. And so I say this because the things that are really amazing right now, that we're getting a lot of hype about right now, 5 years from now will just be software. We won't even think of all those artificial intelligence, because in the overall scheme of things, what we really think AI is going to be, those are not AI. Which we could talk about later. So don't be a denier. That's the bottom line. Don't be a denier. And here's maybe some things that I will leave you with and maybe give us some transition to the panel. If you are a denier, if you are as slow as everyone else is in the Department of Defense, some tactical things. Do some things that are educational or experimental. And don't think of the experiment as we're going to do something really new using AI. That's not where the wins are going to come from, not today and not to start. Do something old and tedious and boring and slow. Like, searching is way better with AI. Who needs to click on links anymore? Just let it tell you. Summarization, drop all the documents that you don't have time to read into a directory and ask it to summarize them for you. Give you the bullets. It's amazing, and then you don't have to read anymore, and you get that time back. Improve your writing. Write it, like one of the coolest things that I did not do today but could have done if I only was an AI believer is write one version of your bio and then have your AI rewrite it to speak to a DOD audience today and an entrepreneur audience tomorrow and a group of investors the next day. It's genius, it works, it's great. Generating graphics, no need to do clip art anymore. You got your own clip art generator. Produce an alternative. This is something I've been playing around with a lot. I know exactly what's right, but I can use the AI to tell me all of the counter arguments or other approaches. And in doing that, I find issues with what I know is right, or I'm better able to defend and argue for my position. Those are a few tactical ideas. Let me give you a few strategic thoughts, especially because of our panel coming back up. The Department of Defense, quite surprised with all this AI stuff, late to the game, with limited capacity to have makeup speed, and relatively poor. This is a really alien concept of the Department of Defense. We have DARPA. DARPA creates things like the internet. We're not surprised by the internet, except that we were, because we made it. We understand hypersonics because we made those, although we sometimes are surprised when our adversaries move faster than we do. But this AI thing is catching the people in the DOD that are paying attention. It catches them a little bit by surprise because the last several years of it have happened in the private sector without government contracts. And you're poor because despite the size of the Department of Defense budget, it's a drop in the bucket to the balance sheet of the leaders in AI. And the consequence of this, again, thinking strategically, is that the supply of AI chips have been bought up by the industry for years in advance. The DOD hasn't started buying, and at the speed that the DOD can move and its relative poverty, it's not gonna be a player. And what does that mean strategically? I think what it means is we better figure out better ways for the Department of Defense to partner with the private sector. And I don't mean the private sector like my little company, I mean the private sector like the titans of industry that have the balance sheets to have the capacity to move the needle and to help us to make up some speed. So we gotta think of a different way to partner on the DoD side because we're late and we're slow and poor. The second strategic thing is there are security challenges. So I the chicken littles before, but there are some real security problems with AI. And we have to think about those as we implement. Where is your data? Do you really know when you're using an AI? Are you leaking? Not leaking the data, leaking the insights from your data into the weights that apply to the AI that's used on the outside, giving up competitive advantage and giving up knowledge. Can you be poisoned? Can you ingest data that an adversary has poisoned in a way that changed the results from what you expected or break your system entirely? And ultimately, how would you know? Do you know because you believe what the company that you partnered with told you, or do you know because you have an ability to actually prove? That's security. Third and last thing I'm gonna say, again, this always hurts when you're in the national security community to hear these things. That's my kids call me the dream crusher. There are fights we're gonna lose. There are AI fights we are going to lose. There are AI fights the United States of America is going to lose, which means that the Department of Defense is going to lose because, hey, we're in the United States. We're gonna lose. And if you wanna know what they are, it's pretty easy. Find an AI application that impinges on privacy or consumer safety, and you will find AI areas where we are going to lose. And China's gonna win. China's gonna do a better job at finding people, faces, voices, because it's a surveillance state. We do that, we protect those things. It's gonna be hard for a US technology to compete. There's plenty of domestic control features of that for the Chinese. There's also plenty of intelligence ideas for the Chinese. The Chinese are already kicking our ass completely on autonomy. Why? Because if a Chinese Tesla runs over a pedestrian, that ain't no big deal. And it's a big deal here. So we're gonna be super slow and cautious, and they're gonna go 100 miles an hour, literally and figuratively. And so I think that means two things to me. When you know you're gonna lose, then you better focus on the areas where we can win, so that we make sure that we win where we can win. And number two is take off of the arrogance that we sometimes have, this American idea that we're always gonna be exceptional, and be ready to lose in a few areas, compensate for it elsewhere. And that's all I've got to say about that. Thank you.